this might seem like an interesting time to do this step, but what I'm going to do next with the body, even before I've glued the neck in, is I'm going to pore fill the majority of it. The reason why is it's just easier to move the body around when I'm doing that before the neck is completely glued in, and because the finishing resin that I'm using, you can only mix up about a tablespoon at a time, and it starts to set up pretty fast. I couldn't do the entire body with the neck assembled at once anyway, so I had to do a piecemeal anyway. So it's just easier to do that before the neck is put in. So the resin that I'm using is a Z-epoxy finishing resin. This was recommended to me by a guy who built acoustic guitars as a resin and pore filler, or a resin-based pore filler, because it has a very, very slight amber tint to it. It makes the color of mahogany really jump. I've done this on one of my other guitars and it works really nicely. It does not work well if you've used a dyed or a stained top, because it tends to pull the dye or the stain out, and it also tends to color whatever color you're after a little amber, so it doesn't work well for that. But for mahogany, or peeling in this case, it works remarkably well, and it gives a very nice color, very slight yellowish tint to the finish, which will make this this grain pop very nicely. I'm going to final sand to this point, break the corners here, and then mix this stuff up. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. The most you can mix up is about a tablespoon at a time before you can get it applied, before it starts to harden. And you apply it just by sort of dripping it on, and then just smoothing it out with either a credit card or something like that, or in this case, these little rubber squeegees that I happen to pick up at a local hardware store, relatively cheap. This works very, very well for forcing the resin into the grain, and you want to do that sort of in a 45 degree to the grain sort of idea. You kind of want to force it into the grain, right? Not traveling along it, not pulling it out, but sort of squishing it in is the idea. And for that, these little rubber pads work great. But of course, when you buy these by a bunch, because once the resin hardens up on these things, they're done. It's kind of a one-shot usage sort of thing. So you can see how on a previous guitar, this side is all mucked up and can't be used again, and this side is the one I'm going to be using for this go-round. everything is prepped and ready to go to spray the first coats of polyurethane. In this case is what I'm using. I have the fretboard all taped up. The only part that I'm actually taping is just the face of the fretboard to cover the frets and the rosewood, because traditionally these are not lacquered. So yeah, that's the only thing that's actually going to be taped off in this whole scenario is this. The finish I'm using is a product from Chemcraft. It was recommended, weirdly enough to me, by the same guy who recommended this epoxy resin stuff. This is a 2-part post-catalyzed polyurethane. Can of this stuff does about 6 guitars or so. Its shelf life is about 2 years-ish, 2 years, 2.5 years or so. If you get the pre-catalyzed stuff that you don't have to mix yourself, the shelf life is about a year before it goes off. The other part that goes with it is this jar catalyst here. 1 jug of this stuff will work for several gallons of this. This stuff never goes bad, so this is the original one that I've had, and so the bottle kind of looks like well, it looks like crap because it's picked up all the dust and random other detritus around the shop over time. Dirty handprints. Ugh, God knows what else. Anyhow, my spray area is not conducive to photography, unfortunately. It's one of these days I'll be a big boy and have a real spray booth. But I've basically got a corner that I can't really film in without being just total disaster and overspray all over the camera. So you're just going to have to trust me when I say, yeah, I'm using a HVLP spray gun hooked up to a 35 gallon air compressor. So it's high volume, low pressure. So having the big tank is the way to go. So yeah, I'm going to get everything mixed, get the stuff mixed up. It lasts for about 24 hours once it's been mixed, and then get the first coats on, at least tonight, and then tomorrow I will level sand the first coats and hopefully be able to reapply. Okay, so it is the next evening. This coat has been drying overnight, although the particular finish that I use hardens in a few hours. I'll let this dry overnight just because the longer it dries the better, and because I happen to have one place where the finish slipped, right there on the headstock near the A-string tuner hole, if you can see it. Maybe, there you go. Yeah, so I have to sand that out, so that's got to make sure that that's actually really good and solid. Because I used a pore filler, I don't have very much orange peel that I have to deal with at this stage. It's a little orange peely, but not too terribly bad. But still, the next step is going to be level sanding this with some 400 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander, and then spraying the next coat of finish, which, if I get lucky, will be the last. The spray gun that I'm using, let me show you guys real fast, is one that I got from a discount hardware store native to, I guess, at least this part of the United States, called Harbor Freight. They're kind of known for selling discount and sometimes subpar tools made from less than quality components overseas. But it turns out this spray gun is like their medium range one. There's a cheaper one and then a more expensive one. And I've had the cheapy one and for a while, and then I use this one now because the other one eventually got clogged up and didn't work very well. But this has all the standard features of most automotive spray guns. The air control here, the flow control for the amount of finish versus air is going in. This controls whether or not it's a spot versus a fan. Adjust the nozzle for vertical versus horizontal spray pattern. One of the things I want to do here is I need to clean this out good before I make my finish run, because any sort of smuts or anything that happens to be in the gun at the time will get sprayed out into your finish, and you definitely don't want that. I also inline with my hose a little desiccant filter container that is basically disposable. Whenever the crystals inside go from, it's not going to show up on camera, go from blue to pink, this thing is done. But this helps make sure that there's no water or oil or anything else that's coming out of the compressor line, which would then go into the gun, go into the finish. You get how that works. So yeah, these are $7 or $8 or so, and they are just kind of a precautionary tool to make sure that the airflow going into your gun is as clean and dry as possible. Because I'm using a catalyzed finish that requires mixing with an activator, or catalyst in this case, I've also used one of these. This is a little plastic graduated cylinder that I got from some local store. Because the particular finish that I'm using is a 10-to-1 ratio, this is marked off as maximum of 25 milliliters. 200 milliliters or so of finish is about all that I spray at a shot. If I mix up 250, I'm basically pouring some out, or I'm working on a larger project than just a guitar. Generally with the first coats of finish, I'll mix this entirely straight. Exactly a 10-to-1 ratio, finish to catalyst. But on my finish coat, I'll add about 3 milliliters or so of lacquer thinner in addition to the catalyst into the finish, so that the final coat is just a little bit thinner than the base coats and tends to flow out just a little bit with even less orange peel than I've got now. So the next thing I'm going to do, aside from level sanding, is I'm going to disassemble my spray gun and leave it soaking in a bath of lacquer thinner for a little while, just to make sure that I don't have any other crud or smuts hanging around in the gun that's going to get sprayed into the final finish. Because once the final finish is on, you really don't have much of an opportunity to do a whole lot of very, very heavy sanding if you happen to pick up some, heavy dust particles or other such crap. So I'm partway through sanding the back. I've used an orbital to sand the majority of the back, right? And I've partially sanded the belly cut. Now, you've heard people talk about when you're doing finishing, you got to level sand everything, get all the shiny spots out. I don't know if I've ever seen videos that try and show exactly what we're talking about. Forgive me if I've missed one that's obvious, but what exactly are we looking for here, all right? So, from the time lapse, you may have seen me with my my cell phones, flashlight out, kind of going across the surface. And I'm hoping this will show up on camera well. See how all of this is uniformly dull? There's no little spots that look like there happens to be any glitter in it. All right? That's what we're looking for. Okay, so if you look down here on the belly cut, right, by the time we get back to here, that's obvious. That is obviously not, right, flat. You can see the entire sort of nearly leopard print sort of model pattern, right? But you really do have to be very, very picky. And I don't know if it's going to show up or not on camera, but right back, let's see if I can point to it, right about there, watch as the camera tracks, or as I'll move the flashlight. Do you see it? Right here, right in front of this dark spot, right in front of this dark stripe. See him right there? Right? Those guys. Those guys have got to go too. Those will show up in the finish later down the line. Okay, it's 24 hours after I sprayed the final coat, and I am wet sanding with some 1000 grit sandpaper. Once you get up into the higher grits, then you try to dry sand, the paper just clogs. So wet sanding is the way to go. So for that, I've got a little sponge backer here. a little bowl of water with a little bit of dish soap in it, which will help the process work a little better. The goal here is the same as with sanding between the level between the coats of finish. I want to get all these little sparklies and orange peel all off of this before I go to the buffer. Now, I do have one of the StewMac big buffing wheels on it's mounted to an arbor on the wall kind of thing. That is just a faster way of getting the job done. It is entirely possible to get the job done just like I'm doing it now. And in fact, with the first set of guitars that I did, I used this entirely because I didn't have anything else. So this is a sandpaper kit which goes from 1,000 grit up to like 120,000. 120 and 3 more zeros, right? This will put a mirror polish on an instrument, but you might as well queue up the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit extended editions and prepare for a very, very long evening because it will take a whole lot of elbow grease to get it done. I've also used one of those automotive car buffers that looks kind of like a big angle grinder that has a foam pad on it. That works really well as well. That's faster than doing it by hand. However, the problem with that is that you have to hang on to that machine with 2 hands, and that does not leave you a free hand to hang on to the guitar, so it's a little dodgy. I still have it and I still use it for anything that I'm doing furniture, right? That works really well for tabletops and things of that nature. But yeah, I'm going to be at this a while. Here's my buffer set. So it is one of the StewMac arbors and buffing wheels. One of these is flannel, one of them is something that starts with D. One of them is softer than the others, the idea. I color coded them so that I could tell which one was which when it's running, so that I don't screw up which polishing compound goes on which wheel. I mean, I could have labeled them with words, but then I had to stop the buffer to recharge. So this is an easy way not to screw it up. This is all just scrap plywood, stuff that I found around the shop to make this out of. This is a $50 motor off of Craigslist. The switch that I picked up off of Amazon, and the reason I picked this particular type of switch is it's like power tool switches, where you have to actually get your finger in here and push it to turn it on, but you can bump it to turn it off. So kind of a nice safety thing. You'll see it on a lot of big power tools. So if I ever get like hung up something in it, I can just bump it to turn it off. I don't have to worry about accidentally bumping it to turn it on. That's the idea. So I'm going to start off with the extra fine because since I already level sanded, I may not need the medium. We'll see. The medium kind of works for actually taking out orange peel, but I did that by sanding. So we'll see how this goes. The other tool I have here, stick these up on the shelf where I can reach them, so I'll need them momentarily, is the rake that goes with the wheels. So the idea is this will let you rake the wheels and pull out any of the dried up polishing compound and get out any sticky spots or anything like that, so that you don't end up damaging the finish with it. And that's about the gist of it. You just, if you've ever seen this done, you basically hang on for dear life with the guitar. For the love of all things holy, you don't want to let it slip at this point. And you just sort of, walk it across the wheel, so to speak. The wheels turn this way, in case you've never seen one of these buffers run before. And then the idea is just kind of be gentle and hope that you don't, let it slip. And you have to be really careful around the edges because you can catch the horns on a guitar of this design, and it will want to drag them away from them pretty fast. I don't attempt to do the inside corners like these around. There we go. Around the horns with this because it's too easy to lose control. For doing the insides of these, I have a couple of little hand buffing wheels, small buffing wheels that are just attached to a cordless screwdriver that I can use to get into these corners without having to worry about the amount of force that's on these knocking the guitar out of my hands. Alright, so I'm going to change over to the time-lapse mode, and then here we go. So I'm finished doing the major part of the polishing on the large buffing wheels. You can see how in some places there appears to be some dull spots. That's just residue that's been left behind by the buffer that I will have to take off. So I did the front, the back, the sides, obviously. But it's really hard to use the big wall-mounted buffer to get inside of this corner here for the output jack, or inside of these horns, or the cutouts for the horns. It is possible to get inside of these with the big buffing wheels, but it's kind of tricky, and it's really easy to hang the guitar and have it want to get tossed. So to do these, I picked up a couple of little small buffing wheels. These kind of wear out sort of fast, so you had to keep replacing them. Fortunately, they're not too terribly expensive. These are going to get labeled in exactly the same way that the buffing wheels are labeled, right? So that I can make sure not to mix up which grade goes with which one as I work on these areas. Once that's finished, I'm down to this level of gloss. The last step is to go over the entire guitar by hand with just some automotive polishing compound. This is designed to just remove, as it says, medium to heavy stains and swirl marks, right? Which will take out any very fine scratches that are left and pull off the buffing residue, which is kind of a pain to get off by hand. A little of this goes a long way. I think this might be only the second one of these bottles that I've ever bought, including using it on my car. So yeah, it just takes a little bit of this applied to a damp cloth, and then it's just a lot of just hand buffing and drying from there. Then we'll be ready to finish sand and polish the neck and fingerboard, and then do the fret level of dressing. So for all of you that have been paying attention as the videos have went along, you may have noticed something that just now sort of dawned on me. I have a bit of a disconnect. Let me show you. See it? How would the hardware have gotten aged and a little funky over time, but yet the body remained pristine? It wouldn't. So I'm going to have to do one of those things that I truly despise and artificially relic the body a bit. Well, at least as much as I can stand before I feel the furnaces of hell warming up for me. I have a philosophical problem with artificially relicking instruments. When I was a broke college student, I had just one guitar and I did my best to take care of it, right? Even now, I do my best to take care of my instruments as well as I can. But, dings and scratches and things invariably happen. But there's a story behind those things, right? It's the bottle cap that was thrown at you by the drunken redneck when you refused to play Freebird. It's the time the bass player turned around too fast and dinged the headstock of your guitar with the head of his bass, right? It's learning that strap locks really do matter, that sometimes even the biggest strap button comes loose and you will barely manage to catch your guitar before it, completely splatters into the concrete. Yeah. Well, crap. Oh well. I guess I'm just going to have to, live with it and do it, because that's what this kind of requires to make it look right. but it hurts my soul a lot. So I bet you've been wondering how I'm going to get the wires through the pipes, right? Threading these, just pushing the wires through would be a giant pain in the butt. You're right. Turns out there's an easy kind of trick to do this. Check this out. Take a little bit of string, right? Tie a knot on the end of it that's sort of, kind of, a little smaller than the diameter of the tube, right? You want it to be fairly decent sized knot, something that's going to fit this, but not snugly, right? Okay, so take a good length of string, feed it into the hole, take my hands are always tangled up. Take the air nozzle from your air compressor and ta-da! Now I can use the string to pull the wires through the conduit. This trick will work with channels inside the guitar, right? If you route out a channel, put a top on, that kind of thing, and it's a pain to get the wires to go through it, this same little trick will work, so long as you get the air compressor nozzle kind of close to it. But there you go. There's your tip for the day. It's alive! It still needs strings. Now for the bad news part. My mom passed away a few days ago. She'd been battling Alzheimer's for years, and her health had taken a pretty rapid decline over the last month or so. And so we all knew it was a question of how soon, not when or if. So, yeah, still sucks. The guitar is finished. So, Sam's putting on the back cover and set up, right? Then he still need to balance the tremolo and adjust the action, all that jazz. But the reality of it is, I may not make the deadline for recording the sound samples and putting the last video together. I'm gonna try my best though to get it done on time. But yeah, we'll see. That's just how it goes sometimes.